Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. We are brought to you by Circa, MegaSports Progressive, and Chalkboard. Jeff Erickson here with Nick Whalen. It was a blowout week 8. Not too many close games. Only one close game within one score. Unfortunately, that was my Bengals doing my Bengal things. Nick, though, what can we learn from these games? Let's try to play these forward a little bit here. We'll start off with, let's just rip the Band-Aid off, talk a little Cincy Jets. I'm not as angst-filled as I was on Sirius XM on Monday morning. I've just resigned myself. It's more of the same. But what can we learn from this?
Yeah, one of the few games where we saw an underdog, not only cover, but win straight up. Favorites ended 11-2 straight up and 11-2 ATS in week 8. So, yeah, with Cincinnati, I think we were reminded once again that this is still a defense to target for fantasy purposes. Not that we really felt any differently coming out of that Pittsburgh game, but obviously the Bengals had some degree of positive momentum, and you're allowing yourself to start thinking and mapping out, like, all right, which games can we win? What number do we have to get to until Joe Burrow comes back? And honestly, this felt kind of a lot like last year, Jeff, where the Bengals got off to that slow start, and then they picked up a little momentum, and there were just a couple of those killer, like, oh man, this isn't going to happen type of games. And this is one that you had to have if you're Cincinnati. And I'm pretty surprised that the New York Jets were able to work their way back into this game, because this wasn't one where the Bengals were just totally running away with it throughout the entire afternoon. But at the same time, they had multiple 2-score leads. It's like, all right, Jets would have an answer, Bengals would answer back. It never really felt totally uncomfortable until late in the fourth quarter. I will say one thing fantasy wise that I took away from this: Justin Fields, at least for another week, feels like he's a viable option. I kind of rage dropped Fields in a couple of leagues during the middle of the week when it sounded like it was going to be Tyrod Taylor. I thought as a passer, this was maybe the best Justin Fields has looked at any point in like the last 2 years. And doing that without Garrett Wilson, I think says a lot about, Fields' confidence right now, the game plan, and then, of course, the Cincinnati defense. But on the fantasy side of things for Cincinnati, I'm still wanting more from T. Higgins. I really thought with Jamar Chase being fed all these targets, there'd be such a focus on, we got to slow down Chase. That opens things up for Higgins. One catch. Thankfully, it was a 44-yard touchdown. And then the other thing is that for the second week in a row, and for the second week this entire season, Bengals are moving the ball on the ground.
Yeah, it was a tremendous game. Samaje Perine, 9 for 94. Chase Brown, a lot of big early runs in this one here. Absolutely. It was a case there where you're looking at this Bengals offense 2 weeks in a row. They look like a real offense. 2.5 weeks now, the second half of that Packers game too. So I think we can kind of take away from that there that, you get even competent quarterback play. It doesn't have to be great quarterback play, but competent quarterback play. And Flacco's capable of that. The main components of this team are pretty good. I am encouraged by the running game. Maybe they fix some things on that offensive line. I'm equally discouraged by the defense, though. This is a Jets offense that, first of all, had Fields, who has, really struggled this year, but no Garrett Wilson, no Josh Reynolds, for crying out loud.
Which does matter for the Jets.
Yeah. It was Tyler Johnson crushing him downfield. And granted, Tyler Johnson got open for a couple plays the week before against Carolina. So maybe there is something there that maybe he can play a little bit more. We're giving him credit for. Alan Lazard, that's we know Alan Lazard and who he is at this point in his career. So the fact that those are the guys that were crushing the Bengals, and of course the running backs, I think we need to treat performances like the Bengals like we need to treat performances by the Cowboys defense, especially when the Cowboys are on the road. We need to grade with a curve here. Yes, Field should get the start after the bye in week 10, but I don't think your rage drop is going to end up looking all that bad. I think there'll be other weeks where Fields is useful, especially because of his legs. And you also probably shouldn't grade him on his toughest game against the Broncos either. But at the same time, he hasn't been transformed as a player. I don't think this has signature significance. I think this was just merely a good game against a terrible team, putting in backups willingly. One of the things about the Bengals is they benched Logan Wilson. Cam Taylor-Britt the week before was benched. And just was not even benched, but a healthy scratch. They're purposely playing these younger players, hoping to find a spark. This is a team that's flailing on defense. There's no evidence that these guys are providing said spark. They're just trying to find one.
I think you're right about Justin Fields in that he can still be startable, but you have to be really careful with the matchup. Like the issue with Fields is the floor has completely fallen out
Yeah.
this season. Not that there's ever been a super high floor with Justin Fields, but even if you just look at the raw game logs, like the bad games are so bad that he might just outright lose you your fantasy matchup. And the good game is good enough that he might give you 25 fantasy points and put you in a really good spot. But there's no like, oh, he just gave me 15. I'll live with that. It's like you're either getting like 3 fantasy points and it's a complete disaster, or you're getting a much better game. And you're right. I mean, like coming out of the bye, they play the Cleveland Browns. I wouldn't feel great about starting him there.
Yeah.
That Ravens game. Well, we'll see what the Ravens defense looks like at that point. They do get the Dolphins at home later this season. They get the Saints. Like there are some spots for Fields, but the lack of a floor is really concerning to me. Just some other notes here for me. Mason Taylor ended up finding the end zone. We know Cincinnati has been a complete disaster against tight ends. They're almost in a category of their own in terms of points allowed. It's like 22 fantasy points per game to the tight end position. And of course, the way Mason Taylor scores is on a contested jump ball from Breece Hall on a broken play. Just a bizarre way for this game to end. And Jamar Chase now 42 targets over the last 2 games. You heard that correctly. 42.
Yep, absolutely. Obnoxious, wonderfully obnoxious numbers there. One other note, Joe Flacco while the Jets were driving on their go-ahead drive, briefly went to the locker room to get his right shoulder looked at. He is day-to-day right now. So we may not see him or may not see him at full capacity against the Bears this week. I mentioned the Cowboys in passing. Let's talk about them real quick too, because this is one where they went on the road after looking competent against the Commanders. They're back to their same old stuff on defense. And I just think they played a Commanders team 2 weeks ago that was completely, totally one-dimensional. That didn't have any of their wideouts, and they just stacked the line. They were at home. Yeah. I think you can almost bet on the Cowboys being one of the worst defenses every week in, week out. Even a team like Arizona will probably be able to move the ball readily against them on Monday night.
Yep.
And I also think that you grade on the curve on their bad performance on Dak Prescott against the Broncos this past week. I think Dak is going to be fine. I think the Cowboy components will be fine. And even in a losing effort, Lamb had 7 catches for 80 yards. Pickens had like 7 catches. Javonte Williams obviously scored twice. The only guy that really suffered was Ferguson, who had the big fat 0 for us after being amazing all season long. But I expect a big bounce back offensively on Monday night against the Cardinals.
I would think so too. I mean, this was pretty easily worst game of the year for Dak Prescott. That'll happen, going up against the Denver defense, a defense that lost Pat Surtain, by the way, and sounds like that'll be a multi-week injury. So setting up for a very interesting game between 2 great defenses still, even without Surtain, against Houston this week. I did think this was the Broncos' best overall game of the season. Now, it's not a coincidence that came against that Dallas defense, which we talk so much about, the secondary being a liability. They also give up a ton of rushing yards. I mean, this is the number 1 defense to face if you're a quarterback or a receiver for fantasy. It's also like the 3rd worst defense against running backs. Like you can just do anything against Dallas. So not a surprise to me that we saw RJ Harvey get loose. Would pump the brakes a little bit because we didn't really see increased usage for Harvey. He was able to pop a long one and then had the 2 short touchdowns. Part of that was just game script. This was completely getting away from Dallas. I mean, at one point, the Broncos scored on 7 of 8 possessions. They scored touchdowns on 6 of those 7 scoring drives. And, it's interesting because this game got off to kind of a dubious start. Dallas drives down the field and, the Broncos get a stop. They hold them to a field goal. And then Bo Nix just throws a terrible interception on the Broncos' first possession. And you're thinking, all right, here we go again. Like this is the game that we thought might be the big breakout for Bo Nix. It did end up being that, but it did not start that way.
Yeah, agreed. And I think we had we've had 2 good RJ Harvey weeks. And as Adam Brunson points out in the comments, a lot of people, Harvey might've been on people's benches this week, just as he probably was for the Bengals Monday night game. I think those will be his 2 best weeks. And then you will go back to the frustrating existence this week against the Texans, another team that's coming off their best week. Let's just morph right into that Texans-Niners game. I'm feeling the Texans right now. I think Bo Nix reverts to form on the road. And I think he has a really tough week against a nasty Houston Texans defense.
Yeah, I could certainly see it. I mean, I don't think we can just fully say, all right, the Broncos are rolling now because of what they did against Dallas. I mean, this is as much of a kind of whiplash 2 weeks as you can have, going from that defense to now having to face the Houston Texans, who, of course, played really well in that San Francisco game. I mean, Niners ran 14 plays in the first half. And it wasn't just the Texans defense, though. I mean, obviously they played well. I thought gave up some uncharacteristic big plays that allowed the Niners to just kind of hang around in this game. Like it really wasn't over until the very end when we had a sack of Brock Purdy. There's another interception in the end zone. But the Niners were just surviving on prayers for a while. Like, this was not a great Christian McCaffrey game by any means. They kept extending drives with these like 3rd and 15. Somehow Jawan Jennings brings it in type of plays. But overall, this was the best CJ Stroud has played in a very long time, maybe in a year and a half. It was the most yards that the Texans have had in a game since midway through the 2023 season. They were excellent on 3rd down. And, my big concern coming into this game was, all right, this offense already can't do anything. We know San Francisco's banged up, but that defense has been able to play pretty well. Now you take Nico Collins out of the mix. What happens? Ended up being a really kind of nice, well-distributed day for that passing game. Like, CJ Stroud, I think was 30 of 37 passing. Xavier Hutchinson's involved. Jalen Knowles involved. Jaden Higgins is involved. And Christian Kirk missed this game as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And I really liked the 2 passes to Hutchinson. One that was like a 20-yarder where he threaded the needle. And then the touchdown one where Hutchinson actually like accelerated away from the DB while scoring. I was impressed with that. I like that they got Noel involved. The Jennings thing on the Niners side, drops a long pass that was good, maybe good for 50+ yards, just drops it, but then comes up with that contested catch later on the same drive where they ended up scoring a touchdown and the 2-point conversion to kind of stay alive in this one. But this whole game was weird. I mean, the Texans started off with a 9.5-minute drive where they converted 2 third downs and a 4th down play on short, where they just kept methodically just advancing and advancing and advancing. The Niners get the ball. There's a penalty on them on 1st down, and then a penalty on the Texans, and then another penalty on the Niners. There's just no flow. I mean, then ultimately it was a 4.5 and out. There was no 1st downs to be had. But they ended up punting on that, and McCaffrey had 1 touch that was overruled by a penalty. McCaffrey didn't get his first official touch until the 2nd quarter of the game. It's just one of those weird games where they had 1 series in the first quarter where they had the ball. And they ended up losing the time of possession battle massively, 42 to 18, basically. Just huge swing in this game. And I want to be, I should be cognizant of that. Maybe I'm overrating the Texans at their best, but this defense has been there all along. It's been a great defense. Even the loss to Seattle, they were that great. So that's why I'm leaning on them going forward. I'm leaning on them in this Broncos game. I know the line seems weird where the Texans are favored over the Broncos, but I think I'm here for it.
I think the Surtain absence really matters when it comes to the line. There aren't too many defensive players, especially defensive backs, who impact lines, but I think he's one of those guys. So that's certainly part of it. I would like to see another game of the offensive line holding up CJ Stroud playing at this level before I fully buy in on Houston, but you don't always have that luxury. Only other thing I'll note on this one, fantasy wise, is Woody Marks outperformed Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb still won the snap battle. He outcarried Woody Marks 17-11. But we saw Marks a little bit more involved as a pass catcher, caught all 4 of his targets for 49 yards, went 11 for 62 on the ground. Chubb just 17 for 56. So I think you look at some of the raw numbers for Woody Marks, and I'm encouraged. Like, if there's a back that I want in Houston, it's still him, but still saw a little bit more Nick Chubb than I would have liked in this game. Like, they're not going to have an overly efficient running game most weeks because of that offensive line. So I'm still pretty encouraged by Woody Marks because it had been really up and down, right? Had the big game and then a couple stinkers. But this was a step in the right direction. Tough matchup though against Denver. Not a fantasy matchup that I'm excited about on either side.
Agreed. Marks's big play was that pass, that reception on the second drive. And that play, I think Bethune, the guy that was replacing Warner, was assigned to him. Stroud steps up in the pocket. Bethune goes towards Stroud. And Marks fans out, and there's nobody within an acre of him. And then he to his credit, he made a lot of, he turned it up right away, made 1 good cut. But that was a total blown coverage. And we've seen just that little thing can make such a big difference. Saw that on Monday night too, where somehow Kelsey was left open in the flat. That was a huge play in the Monday night game too. We'll talk about that game momentarily, but first, quick note from our friends over at Circa. As you know, Circa has been a longtime sponsor of RotoWire. We love working with them. It is football season. The best place to catch games is at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas, featuring the best pool in history, Stadium Swim. Stadium Swim has 3 levels, 6 pools, and a 143-foot diagonal screen. Whether it's Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. No matter the size of your group, Stadium Swim is the place for you. From owner suites to cabanas, day beds to stadium booths, there are seating choices for everyone. And the best part, Stadium Swim is open 365 days a year. With temperature-controlled pools, it's a great place to catch the games all season long. Stadium Swim, located at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Book today at circalasvegas.com. All right, let's talk about those Chiefs. I get the feeling that we're going to get a lot of Chiefs fatigue again this season, Nick. I think they're inevitable. They are going to be, at worst, in the AFC Championship game. I just feel like they're getting Rashee Rice back has transformed this offense. And I feel like every time they get the ball, they're going to at least put together a drive. They may screw it up at the end, but this is now the scariest team in the NFL.
Yeah, I think you phrased it pretty well, because they had no true drive, not counting, before the half where they didn't really have time to do anything, of fewer than 6 plays last night against Washington. And their shortest drive of the night was one that ended on an interception from Patrick Mahomes. That was the one that was off the hands of Travis Kelce. Very weird start to this game. 2 picks on the first 2 possessions, one for each team. Washington then goes out on downs on that weird review play. KC throws another pick. Washington goes out on downs again. And then both teams score a touchdown before half. So you look at the final score, 28-7. Kansas City did end up dominating the game. When you look at total yardage, 432 to 260, 6.4 yards per play, 26 first downs for Kansas City. But that dominance didn't really start until the third quarter, when they came out with 3 straight touchdown drives to really put this game away. The inevitability definitely is there. I don't really mind it. I'm actually glad that the Chiefs are back to being fun to watch. Like, we're seeing Mahomes make Mahomes plays. Rashee Rice is one of my favorite players to watch in the NFL. You're right. He's taken this offense to another level, and it was an offense that was already ascending before he came back. And, I think what's interesting now is, like, you look at last year's Chiefs, and yes, they were still really effective. They made the Super Bowl. It never really looked like it was right. And, like, this is the full plan now. You have Rice out there. You have Worthy out there. You have Kelce out there. Like, Juju Smith-Schuster, Hollywood Brown, these are your 4th, 5th options. Those guys were, like, at times your 1st and 2nd option last year. This is how it was supposed to look all along. And I think that the Chiefs have issued a nice reminder over the last month of just how effective this offense could be. Now, Isaiah Pacheco does have an MCL injury. Very, very lucky that this is not worse. I mean, if you saw that play, just a direct helmet to the knee. I have no idea how he avoided more damage, but they're calling him week to week. I would say it's pretty unlikely that he's out there this week against the Buffalo Bills. Kareem Hunt, Brashard Smith, your level of interest?
They have to be rostered, both of them. They probably already are. You'd
be surprised. Sorry to cut you off. I was looking that up just before this. Kareem Hunt's available in like 70% of ESPN leagues. Really? Brashard Smith available in about 88%.
Then that's my top pickup for the week then, is Kareem Hunt. I mean, they love him at the goal line. They just absolutely love having him at the goal line. And in that Chiefs offense, that's a pretty valuable property. I think you'll find, Smith barely played last night. He had one good play that was overturned by a penalty. But he's got to be rostered too, and he might be a desperation play. If you've got Quinshon Judkins this week, I think that might be one of those things that's, is a chance to be able to work out there. So, I think he needs to be rostered too. So I am interested in that. And you want running backs against the Bills. Even last week, notwithstanding, with the Panthers falling up so short. And we can talk about that because we have news out of Carolina too.
Well, you're right about that. For as good as this Bills team is, like that's been the one big liability, has been that run defense. In terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs, this is a bottom 5 defense. Certainly one to target. They're 27th right now in fantasy points allowed, over 25 per game. I think it's Kareem Hunt first, just because, as we saw last night, even when Pacheco is running well, it's 2nd and goal from the 1 yard line. Who's coming in to vulture the touchdown? Even in a receiving situation, it's still Kareem Hunt. So this could easily be a spot where you get at least 1, maybe 2 touchdowns out of him. I think we'll see more Brashard Smith by default, but there's a much lower floor there.
Absolutely. Without a doubt there is. And so but at the same, and we talked about how there's lack of juice in the Chiefs running backs all along, and maybe they'll trade for a back. Maybe this injury prompts a trade for Breece Hall or something like that.
Yeah. That would be something.
Go pick up Isaiah Davis.
People would not be happy about that.
Oh my goodness. No. But that's why it needs to happen. I like seeing people get angry online. So now that my Bengals are done, I can just be like a jester instead and just point at it there and laugh. But so we're talking Bills here a little bit. and we have to talk Panthers. There's Dave Canales today said that Rico Dowdle is going to get more of the work over Chuba Hubbard, and deservedly so.
Yep.
Dowdle has been the better back recently in two direct comparisons the last 2 weeks. He's been more effective. Not set. Maybe you want to set aside the Dallas and Miami games. We talked about grading on the curve for context there. Lighting up the Dolphins, lighting up the Cowboys is expected, but still the degree to which he did is pretty noteworthy there. This should be the case. And he gets a tough start at Green Bay this week, but he is going to be the main guy.
Yeah, if you read between the lines on how Canales was talking about this, it was almost like a past tense on Chuba Hubbard. Almost like a thanks for being a part of this team. A guy they just signed to an extension last season, by the way. But yeah, it really does look like they're prepared to move forward with Rico Dowdle as the main guy, and that doesn't mean Chuba Hubbard is just completely banished. He's still going to have a say in that backfield. But let's say it's 70-30 going forward. I still don't love this spot against Green Bay, which has been, arguably pound for pound the best run defense. Cleveland, of course, has a say in that as well. But if you're Carolina, what you need to avoid is what happened last week against Buffalo. Yeah. You can't fall down by 2 scores. You can run your way back into a game against Miami like they did earlier this season. You can't do that against Buffalo. You probably can't do it against Green Bay. So they need to find a way to keep this game close enough for Dowdle to see those 17, 18 carries. But the schedule gets friendlier after that. You get the Saints at home next week. They got the Falcons on the schedule. You get the Saints again, right on the cusp of the fantasy playoffs. It's not the most fantasy friendly schedule though. I'll say that. A couple games against the Buccaneers, Seattle, the Rams, and what should be a healthier version of the Niners at that point. But either way, even if you're not all that high on Carolina, I am not the rest of the way. We have a clear starter in an NFL offense, and that always matters.
Yep. Now, quarterback is going to matter too for Carolina.
Yes, it is.
Our headline on our latest Andy Dalton update says it best. Andy Dalton overwhelmed in the loss to the Bills. That's exactly how it looked. He looked overwhelmed trying to deal with the Bills pass rush. Got sacked 7 times. The type of sacks that they were happening there were laughable at times, including the one in the 2-minute drill. Just inexcusable. The Panthers, they got down to like the Bills 10-yard line on that drive. End up with a rushed field goal attempt, which would have been missed anyhow, even if they said it went off on time, but it would have been reviewed. I think you made that point yesterday on XM, but it was just a disaster sequence. He got sacked a couple times on that drive. He had the fumble on their second drive, strip sack from behind. He just looked like 2 steps slower than the game, not just a step slower, but 2 steps slower. Just a huge degree in difference. And it breaks me. I have fondness for Andy Dalton for his years as a Bengal. He serviced under the Bengals and he did well. He made the playoffs multiple times under that regime. Did they get over the hump?
Serviced is such a perfect descriptor.
Yeah. He was a journeyman quarterback in every sense of the word. And I kind of like him, but man, it's over. It looks so over.
Yeah, I feel foolish because I was like, it's a downgrade, but maybe it's not that big of a downgrade. And, he'll be willing to take some shots down the field. No, it was just bad. It was bad. It's pretty tough to play an entire game. Like he wasn't injured, wasn't benched at any point and finished with 2.1 fantasy points.
Yeah.
He threw for 175 yards, but when you throw a pick and you're sacked 7 times and you fumble twice, that's what's going to happen. So, that line is out to 13 right now, Packers-Panthers this week.
Mm-hmm.
That tells me the early indication is that we might see Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right about that. What would you think it would be with Bryce Young, though, out of curiosity?
I think that's 9.5 to 10 with Bryce Young.
I said it at 10 initially and thinking that Bryce Young might be back. Yeah. Young had, quote unquote, an encouraging running session yesterday, but we'll see if he practices. I don't think it's going to happen. Who looked worse, Andy Dalton or Kirk Cousins?
Really good question. The question of the
all
week,
the hard-hitting questions here.
Probably Kirk Cousins to me. At least Dalton was trying to do things, and the offensive line did him no favors. Cousins was Dalton had more comedic element to his game, whereas Cousins, it was just sad. It was just really sad. Like some of the sacks he took, just kind of crumpling up in a ball and please don't hit me. Really at no point made a run in this game. Their biggest play of the day came out of pass interference down the field. That was what it took to put them even close to scoring position.
Yep.
And then of course, Bijan Robinson fumbles immediately after, forced his own fumble, by the way, just kicked the ball out of his own hands. And that was really the only point where you're like, all right, if they could punch this in, I think it would have been 17-10 at that point. Maybe you can flush that terrible first half. You can make something happen. As soon as Bijan fumbled, it was just totally over. I don't have a lot to say about this game. It obviously went counter to what everybody expected. Should have been high volume for Robinson. Should have been high volume for Algier. At least he found his way into the end zone in garbage time. But a big letdown for the Falcons defense, too. I mean, you can't score 10 points and say you expect to win that game. You also should be giving up 34 to the Dolphins at home.
No. Ollie Gordon scores on a screen pass touchdown where there was no one within a parsec of him. Yeah. There was a walk-in touchdown. You and I discussed it earlier on XM, but the drive in the 2-minute drill before halftime, just inexcusable. They had one face mask penalty for a first down. They convert a 3rd and 11 with 18 seconds left to get it to like the 9-yard line. They score the next play. Just things that should not happen. It wasn't like Achane was killing them. He was 18 for 67, 3.7 yards per carry. It wasn't like they had Tyreek Hill out there. No, it was just methodical, good Tua. A ill, pink-eyed Tua was just tearing him, carving him up. And there was just no like intensity in this game. They got the Tua on the very first drive, sacked him on the first drive, caused a 3-and-out. Not a single sack the rest of the game. Just inexcusable. Total no-show by the Falcons. I think when the chips are down, they quit like nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, they've had the 2 biggest no-shows of the year, in my opinion. I don't even think it's close. The Carolina game and then this one where it's, teams have lost in worse ways. There have been, bigger ATS upsets on the season. There have been no bigger just total laydowns than what the Falcons seem to do once a month.
Exactly. And I'm not holding any extra bitterness because they knocked me out of Circuit Survivor or anything, but man, just what a dog of a team. And they'll probably, the weird part is, they'll this week they go to New England. They're like 5.5 point
probably win
dogs, and they'll play a really tough game.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that's how it always works out inevitably.
Yep.
This podcast is brought to you by MegaSportsPro. You can elevate your game with the ultimate sports contest, MegaSports Progressive. Dive into a world of excitement with 3 progressive jackpots and a chance to win big every week and every month. We're rewarding 1,500 lucky winners, distributing over $50,000 in monthly prizes. All you do is answer 15 daily sports props. Add up your correct responses for the week's cash prizes and tally the week's totals for huge monthly cash rewards. MegaSports Pro makes it fun and easy to join. This is a thrilling opportunity to be part of our growing community of sports enthusiasts. Sign up today and unlock a chance to win big every day, every week, and every month. Sign up is free, no commitments, no credit cards. Your first 9 days of play are free. Visit MegaSportsPro.com today. Thanks to MegaSports Pro. The Baltimore Ravens play Thursday night against those Miami Dolphins that just won. The Ravens beat the Bears without Lamar Jackson. We could talk about the skullduggery about the injury report and all that, but let's talk about the product on the field first. They were able to do this against a Bears team that was missing their corners, and I think that mattered quite a bit in this game. I don't think the Bears were able to also generate much of a pass rush against Tyler Huntley. I more want to focus, though, that the Ravens defense actually played pretty well in this game against a Bears team, that was coming off the bye, should have been better than this.
Yeah, that's the first thing I had written down in my notes was just a really disappointing spot for Chicago. You had won 4 in a row. Everybody's still kind of questioning, like, all right, how real is this? You forced all these turnovers. You mostly beat either bad teams or injured teams. This was another potentially bad / injured team. And I think the Bears kind of reminded us that, all right, they're not quite in the circle of trust yet. But this was a very evenly played game overall. Like, Bears ended up outgaining the Ravens on the day. The issue was for Chicago was just drives stalling out over and over. First 2 drives of the game, they marched right down the field, get into the red zone, and it's just panic for whatever reason. And this has been the case for most of the season. When the Bears get to the red zone, they just kind of lose their minds, and it's like 3rd and 2, you got to pick it up, and Caleb Williams is running around and can't find anybody. That happened over and over in this game. The Bears defense didn't play great. I thought it was a really good effort by Snoop Hundley. Ostensibly didn't know he was starting until late in the week. Who knows about that?
Oh, he knew.
But Snoop was incredible. I thought he was really, really good. Missed a couple of throws. There was one where this is in the red zone. He's rolling left, tried to throw back across his body. Probably should have been intercepted. Just a terrible throw. But this could have been a bigger beatdown, honestly, despite how close this game was played in terms of the team numbers. Baltimore was 3 of 6 in the red zone and missed some golden opportunities where they were moving the ball, much like Chicago, and just kind of stalled out. You think there's maybe a little bit of a lack of trust in Huntley to make the right decision. They went away from Derrick Henry over and over in the red zone. But at the end of the day, the Ravens get it done. This was a really, really dicey spot with the Lamar news late in the week. And I mean, even if they had dropped to 1-6, there would still be believers out there, especially with the Steelers losing on Sunday nights. But this was a huge win to bank without Lamar, because they could have thrown Lamar out there at 70%. You try to get through this game. Maybe he gets hurt again. Like, now, in theory, you're getting full strength Lamar back on a short week.
Is 4 days going to change that?
I wonder. I wonder that too.
Yeah. Degree. I think I'm going to start Lamar pretty confidently. I think they just
have to. It's the Dolphins. Yeah,
I think so. And I also think, again, this is one of those, the Dolphins still are stinky, and that's not the word you used in the movie Major League, but they are still a stinky defense. I still think you can go ahead and, target them a lot there. I think this is a good get well game for Derrick Henry. Yeah. I think I think what happened was the Dolphins were much like the Cowboys the week before against the Commanders, where they realized pretty quickly Atlanta was going to be one-dimensional. Maybe when the second that Drake London was announced inactive, they stacked the line and said, go ahead, we're going to shut down Bijan. We're going to shut down Algier. Kirk Cousins, go ahead and beat us. He couldn't. They can't do that against Baltimore.
No. I think you can't. And even against a Snoop Huntley-led Baltimore, I don't think you can do that. The Ravens were really effective with the quick passing game, kind of getting Huntley out in space and then just kind of giving him a couple options. Who do you want to hit for a 3-4 yard gain? I mean, best throw of the day was to DeAndre Hopkins to kind of seal the game up. Chicago ended up making a fluky run at the end and almost scored. But a really nice kind of back shoulder jump ball for DeAndre Hopkins on a third down.
Where he got away with a shove, by the way, too.
A little bit. But, it's DeAndre Hopkins. He gets the benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
Obviously, we had the big play in this game was the Caleb interception. Like, that was the one true mistake that either team made was, throwing that ball from basically your own goal line just way late. Dunze was open and he threw it like 3 seconds late, gave Nate Wiggins a chance to jump in front of it. 2 plays later, Baltimore cashes that in. And then just to kind of wrap up on this game fantasy wise, Bears running back split. DeAndre Swift, 31 snaps, 14 routes, 2 targets, 11 carries. Monangai, 29 snaps, 15 routes, no targets, 7 carries. So it's not a banner day for either back, but snap-wise, still pretty comparable.
Monangai is a sneaky, bye week issue start against the Bengals this week. And Swift is like a slam dunk start. Obviously, they're against that there. And Colston Loveland is was on the field constantly in that game. He will be a target against the Bengals as well.
We'll see if Komet's back.
Yeah. 2 other notes on that. The Kevin Byard dropped interception was a massive play in that game. Immediately after, they get pinned down to the 3 on that punt. 2 plays later is the pick. Caleb had tons of time on that play, by the way. He just didn't see it. Whereas earlier in the game, the Ravens did generate a pass rush. There's 2 intentional groundings in the second quarter. One of which was during the 2-minute drill. Huge play in that game, too. Not coming away with any points there.
Caleb just loves intentional grounding.
Yeah. He's being told don't take sacks. So this is what happens. You throw a bad pick and you get some intentional grounding instead, I guess. But that was tough there. No real transition from that. We already talked Bears and Bears-Bengals a little bit. So let's talk Chargers-Vikings instead. The Thursday night game real quick here. Only want to bring that up. Usually I don't always want to spend too much time on Thursday night, but the quarterback situation in Minnesota. Carson Wentz out for the year with the left shoulder injury that he suffered in London. And the Vikings knowingly had him play through it there. There's a lot of blowback right now on the Vikings and their fan base about the training staff against KOC. McCarthy speculated not to be ready. They're hiding him. Saw Dr. David Chow and Ryan Leaf get into a Twitter dust up based on starting on that note there a little bit there. Some weird stuff going on in this space. They travel to face the Lions coming off a bye in Detroit. It's a bad spot.
Yeah, Vikings are in trouble here. Still way too early to say if JJ McCarthy is bad. I don't think that they're intentionally holding him out at this point, although there was a video going around where at some point during that game on Thursday night, a player ran out of bounds and you could see McCarthy scamper out of the way and they're like, oh, he looks pretty nimble. He could have played. There's also
that's enough right there.
There's also interest in this Max Brosmer kid from Minnesota who lit it up in the preseason, and I think people wanted to see him. either way, Wentz was horrible in this game. He was banged up. He's wearing this big bulky brace on his shoulder. There were like 2 times at least where you thought they have to pull him. He's in such pain, and they just didn't. Really disappointing effort, I thought, from Minnesota on both sides. Maybe if that dubious non-pick six is called correctly, this game goes differently. But even after that, I mean, Minnesota just had nothing. I mean, they made this Chargers offense look like the best unit in the NFL. And that was, I was on Minnesota to cover, 3.5, and thinking like, all right, the Chargers aren't just gonna be able to throw all over a Brian Flores defense, which is just like this cliche that we say every single week. And sometimes it just doesn't matter because they had nothing. And even if I don't think the book is written on McCarthy, which again, it's been 2 games, like a game and a half, really. I don't know how you could be optimistic about this offense, especially this spot against Detroit, a team that just loves beating up on bad quarterbacks, running up the score. The Vikings running game has completely evaporated. They had no push whatsoever. And, if you're holding Justin Jefferson, especially Jordan Addison, it's just tough to be optimistic about the rest of the season.
It is. No Christian Darrisaw in the second half of that game. That was a big loss. Their center's on IR for multiple concussions. Their right tackle has been in and out and hasn't been good. They had a converted guard playing center in this game and against the Chargers, and it showed. The running back situation is a mess. It was 60-40 in terms of the snap split between Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. I think it should have been the other way around. And given how little practice time Jones had going into this game, there's not a thing that was good coming out of this game for the Vikings.
No, and you just wonder about like the future direction of the franchise. It's like I feel like maybe I'm being a little rash here saying their season is over, but they're in all likelihood going to be 3-5, losing to Detroit. You get the Ravens after that. You still have to go to Green Bay. You play the Packers twice, but obviously one of those in Green Bay. You got to go to Seattle. You got the Cowboys on the schedule. Like I think this year is going to get away from them, and that was not necessarily supposed to be the case. It's like how much regret do you have if you're the Vikings for not keeping Sam Darnold in-house? I know there are a lot of factors there because you had McCarthy already sitting on the bench, and he's kind of on a clock with that rookie contract, but it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where JJ McCarthy is like ready to go out and win 11 games next year.
Well, so they were in a pinch because there's huge financial ramifications here. Darnold would have, was a $30 million a year type of guy. Even if they like use a franchise tag on him, that locks up that's basically the 2 interior offensive linemen they signed this offseason. Now, the fact that they got hurt is not great. Right. It's kind of blown this analysis up to bits, but there's that. Remember, the Vikings had not that many draft picks in this year's draft either. So they were really kind of in a pinch here. And so they kind of committed to that path of doing the reset financially and going on the quarterback with the rookie contract. McCarthy getting hurt last year, while it was a short-term boon for Darnold and how good Darnold looked in the season, they needed him to get those reps then. That was the plan all along, and it really wrecked him that he wasn't even getting practice reps. And you kind of see it. I think they're in a really impossible spot. I think there's a lot of parallels. Obviously, the quarterback situation is different, but there are a lot of parallels between the Vikings and the Commanders right now in terms of state of the franchise, looking at the upcoming schedule, outlook for the rest of the season. It's pretty grim for both of them.
I like that comparison, but Washington has the quarterback. That's like the be all end all, right? Like the Washington needs to reset everything else on the roster, but you have the most important piece locked in. Right. And I think most teams would. Neither situation is super appealing right now, but I think most teams would say, "Yeah, give me Jaden Daniels."
Yeah, at least we got the quarterback.
We'll figure the rest out. Whereas Minnesota has kind of built this roster to be like, all right, we don't need McCarthy to play at an elite level, but we'll be so good everywhere else that it'll kind of raise the tides, and that just hasn't been the case.
Indeed. Let's talk a little Eagles-Vikings real quick here. Eagles found themselves offensively. They're on bye this week, so I don't want to spend too much time on them, but I do want to talk the Giants. Life without Cam Scatterbo going forward there. Gruesome injury. It's Tyrone Tracy. It's Devin Singletary as your next 2 backs up. Question in the chat. How much of how aggressive are you going to be on Tracy if he's available in Fab? In this particular case, he's got 300 left in Fab, but only has Gainwell, Rashad White, and Ramondre Stevenson. It's a tough spot right now. How aggressive would you be on Tyrone Tracy in this instance?
Yeah, I mean, in that situation where, after the bye, you're probably losing Rashad White as a starting option, I would be more willing to be aggressive on Tracy just because you're going to get a floor out of him. We'll see some Singletary, but this should be Tyrone Tracy's backfield for the most part. It's just like, what is the ceiling? Like if you get 1 20-point week out of him, I think that feels like a win. But you should at least be able to lock in the 8 to 14 fantasy points a lot of weeks. So that's important. If you're light at running back, I think you could go. There are other options if you want to go like big game hunting as far as who could miss a week coming out of the bye. Keeping an eye on Quinshon Judkins. Saquon, of course, got hurt in this game. A very well timed bye for the Eagles given that injury. But we also have some handcuffs starting to emerge. Jaden Blue. Obviously you could look at the Kansas City situation. That you're in this specific question asker's instance, you're looking for something a little more long-term, but I think I would rather start Kareem Hunt this week against Buffalo than I would Tyrone Tracy against the Niners.
I agree. Absolutely. And watch out for if Judkins has to miss time after the bye, they might be trading Jerome Ford. So you might be, I would take that stab on Dylan Sampson there too.
It's too early to speculate, but it's an AC joint injury. It's not like, he's just dealing with a sore shoulder. Like it's totally possible Judkins could miss at least a week.
Or at least has a significantly reduced workload too.
Yeah.
I can see that happening for sure. We're brought to you by the folks over at Chalkboard. Cash in on your NFL picks this season with Chalkboard. Simply choose more or less on your favorite player stats to win up to 5,000 times your money. For a limited time only, new players receive a free pick and 100% deposit match. See why over 1 million fans have already locked in with Chalkboard to turn their sports knowledge into cold, hard cash. Whether you're locking in the perfect slip with alternate lines, using the cash out feature to take your money and run, or hammering the daily promos, today is your chance to win up to $40,000 on a single entry. Stop sitting on the sidelines. Get into the game with Chalkboard Fantasy Sports. Now available in 30-plus states. Download Chalkboard today and use promo code ROTONFL. That's ROTONFL to claim your free pick and 100% deposit match now. Jeff Erickson here with Nick Whalen. We are breaking down the week that was in week 8. The Sunday night game was the Packers turning in a huge second half. Jordan Love turning in a huge second half. Tyler Kraft exhibiting his dominance all game long. What's in Nick's notebook about this game?
Man, a lot to unpack, actually. I did not think Green Bay played very well in the first half. Obviously, a lot of mistakes, 2 missed field goals, questionable play calling, Keyshawn Nixon playing like the worst possible half that you can as an NFL starting cornerback. And then the Packers just hitting the gas and leaning heavily on that passing game to do so in the second half. I think this is kind of what people have been asking for Jordan Love, like put the ball in his hands, let him make plays down the field. As usual, Green Bay started out, looked pretty good. I think it was their second drive, went right down the field for a touchdown. And then after that, they hit one big play to Tucker Kraft and gained 0 yards on the next 3 plays. You have to settle for a 57-yarder with your injured kicker on a bad field. Mm-hmm. And it comes up short. Like that's been pretty reminiscent of how a lot of these Packers sequences have gone, where it's like Matt LaFleur seems to be like intentionally pulling back. It's like, why is Savion Williams running into the line on first down? Why are you throwing an unblocked bubble screen on second down? And then it puts you in the situation where you feel like you have to get a chunk play on third down. But the second half, I think, was maybe the best half, one of the 3 best halves we've seen from Jordan Love so far in his career. I mean, completed 20 straight passes at one point and still probably could have been better, to be honest. Like missed a wide open Matthew Golden for what should have been kind of the knockout punch, walk-in touchdown. Packers had to settle for a couple field goals late in the game. The offensive line to me is still a concern for Green Bay going forward. O-line and cornerback, I think those are the two spots you have to look at as the deadline approaches. They're not getting a lot of push. Teams have been running all over the Steelers this season. The Packers really couldn't do that. I thought Josh Jacobs looked pretty slow for the most part. Emmanuel Wilson had a little more pop in the second half. Still a very frustrating split in terms of the pass catching. Like Tucker Kraft is that dude. There's no question about it. He has 134 yards after contact this season, which is almost double what the next highest tight end on the list has. He's second only to Jamar Chase in yards after the catch this season, any position in the NFL, which is pretty wild and also checks out if you watch him every week. But the wide receivers, man, like now we're adding Christian Watson back into the mix, and he goes 4 for 85. Romeo
Are
Doubs
you adding Christian Watson to your leagues?
I would think about it. I mean, they seem to be almost prioritizing him right away over Matthew Golden. Dontavian Wicks is still banged up. He didn't play this past week, so we saw some Malik Heath. I think so. I mean, he's like 12% rostered in ESPN leagues. If I have a bench spot where I'm cycling through these, third receiver for the Falcons, third receiver for the Broncos, like, yeah, I'd think about it.
I definitely would. I don't love the matchup against the Panthers corners, ironically enough, but because I think they actually have decent corners. But yeah, I think I am too. I think it was convenient that Wicks wasn't there for us. But yeah, you're right. They still insist on getting Heath and Savion Williams and others and friends involved a lot there, and that's always tough. Pittsburgh side, another disappointing performance by this defense.
Yes.
They're home underdogs against the Colts this week, and I think
actually
justifiably.
Yes, this defense is bad. It's been bad for the entire year, and I think the numbers, which still aren't that good, but the numbers are juiced a little bit by like the Cleveland game specifically when the Browns did absolutely nothing. But every time the Steelers have run into a competent quarterback or even just a semi-competent offense like the Jets, which is not a competent offense, put 32 points on this team in week 1, they struggle. They struggle, man. They have injuries in the secondary. The defensive line just doesn't feel like it has that same pop that it's had in years past. And that was going up against a struggling Packers offensive line. We saw plays down the field. We saw dumb penalties by the Steelers, just very kind of an uncharacteristic first half for this defense. And really it was Chris Boswell that kept him in the game for the first 3 quarters. I did think Aaron Rodgers was pretty good. Had a couple should have been bigger plays down the field. Miscommunication with the receiver or ball just being a little bit too far. But Rodgers continues to play well. I still like Jalen Warren rest of season. It's a team that just has to upgrade at receiver. I think offensively, I don't know how long you can get away with this. We're going to use 4 tight ends and you never know which one is going to hurt you each week. Outside of Metcalf, there's just not a lot of punch there. But yeah, defensively, it's just for so long, you could just assume the Steelers will be a top 10 defense. They're going to be top 5 in the NFL in sacks. That's just what they do. That has not been the case. And I think they know it too. Some of the comments after the game from guys like Cam Hayward and TJ Watts, like they sense that I wouldn't say the season is slipping away, but they need to change something.
Yeah. And Green Bay, one thing that effectively they did was get the ball out quickly against them. And the Bengals did so the week before too. You don't give Watt time to get there. Yep. Herbig is the only guy I think that's been getting, has been, the guy getting there quicker. And that's because he's obviously got different matchups there too. You just don't want to don't let this Steelers defensive line tee off. And as long as you do that, the coverage isn't strong enough on the back end there. I suspect the Colts will move the ball pretty readily against the Steelers there. I think the Steelers will move the ball themselves. Like you said, I think that Rodgers has been pretty effective, all things considered. Better than I thought it would happen. Yeah. Better. I think other than maybe a couple signs of frustration this year, I think the attitude has not been an issue there at all. I'm giving him a bit more credit. Helps when you're winning. We'll see. That Bengals game, there's a couple of things where he lashed out. The flea flicker that wasn't supposed to be a flea flicker. The offensive lineman jumping on his back was pretty funny in that one there. But all in all, that side of the coin has actually worked out better than I expected. We mentioned they play the Colts this week. Colts took care of business against the Titans. I don't think there's a whole lot to say about the Colts. They're good. Jonathan Taylor is good at football. But the Titans are interesting to me because they're going to come up at the trade deadline. They traded one of their corners yesterday. Yep. I think Tony Pollard might get dealt if they can find a taker or get another pick for him. Tajay Spears had a big play in the second quarter of that game. He might be someone that's a little bit of an interest the rest of the way.
Yeah, for as bad as the Titans are, I think there are actually some fantasy situations to keep an eye on, Tajay Spears being one of them. It's basically been a 50-50 split these last couple of weeks between he and Pollard. And, knowing how the Chiefs operate, Jeff, like if they do make a move at the deadline, I don't think it would be Breece Hall. I don't think it'd be Alvin Kamara, but someone like Tony Pollard, I think would make a lot of sense for KC. And obviously at that point, it would be wheels up for Tajay Spears. 3 straight games with at least 3 catches for him. You got in the end zone this past week, finished 9 for 59. Like he's just looked more explosive than Tony Pollard playing behind a bad offensive line. And then, a couple wide receivers to keep an eye on, especially if Calvin Ridley remains out. No real update on him yet. Aya Manor, he's probably rostered in most leagues, might still be out there in some casual leagues, but Jamari DK, somebody to keep an eye on. Maybe Van Jefferson, Aya Manor, DK, and Jefferson all had 8 targets this past week. DK's made the bigger impact, 4 for 70 and a touchdown last week, 7 for 93 this week. But the Titans are going to keep playing from behind. Like that's the thing. Like there's a disconnect between team success and receiver fantasy success for Tennessee.
Absolutely agree. Ridley is in that pocket of just uber disappointing receivers that in the draft, and keep on thinking, well, he's going to get all this target share, and he did get that target share and did nothing with it earlier. It's a tough year for Ward. He'll be better days for him. There's some
Yeah.
things I see from him every once in a while. I like DK. I do worry about size for him a little bit. And that's why a lot of people like Ayuman better long-term. I think DK might be a slightly better player right now, but I think Ayuman might be the better investment. I don't know. I'm kind of waffling on that one.
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be a correct answer, to be honest. It's the Titans. I don't know. Cam Ward still has like 3 or 4 throws every week where I'm like, all right, I see it. I actually think he's been decent on balance relative to the rest of this team. He tries to push the ball downfield. He's not one of these quarterbacks who just, eats a ton of sacks and is throwing balls away. Like he's doing what he can to try to keep this offense alive. So I think there should be some value the rest of the way. Obviously a very tough matchup at home against the Chargers this week, but there are very few like good to okay matchups even for Tennessee. You're just kind of hoping you get some garbage time production more than anything.
Indeed. Let's talk a little Pats Browns, and one of these weeks I'll do Pats earlier in the discussion. Other than the big win over the Bills, I think they've always been towards the back of our discussion. So we'll throw some more bouquets Drake May's way earlier in future podcasts. But because again, he threw a couple of dimes. The touchdown to Butte was just sick, just a sick throw. And he does that 2 or 3 times every game. It feels like he was under a ton of duress though. Will Campbell versus Myles Garrett was not for the not for the easily offended eyes. So because Campbell was getting beat around pretty good by Garrett.
Yeah, 5 sacks for Myles Garrett. Had himself a day. Browns really did nothing else other than that. Put up an opening drive touchdown. Like Cleveland's done this a few times. Like their first scripted drive can look okay. And then it's just a disaster.
Sweet plays.
After that, it was punt, missed field goal, which came right after an interception. Like they were gifted a turnover, a rare Drake May turnover, and turned that into no points. So punt, missed field goal, punt, interception. None of those drives lasted more than 5 plays. I just don't really see it with Dylan Gabriel. I know for the most part he's done an okay job, like taking care of the football. Just has nothing down the field. Like anytime he has to throw it more than like 8 yards, it just feels like there's no chance that it's being completed. The tight ends for Cleveland continue to hang around. Like Harold Vannon still seeing targets, and Njoku got a garbage time touchdown. Still wonder if he could be traded at some point. But for New England to not play all that well in this game and still win by 19 points. I mean, this for a lot of young teams, this would be kind of a trip up spot. You're playing a tough defense, a team that's beat the Green Bay Packers this season. And it was just really no trouble for New England.
Exactly. We had it could have been worse too. Travion Henderson fumbled at the goal line too. Can't do that, but he was running well before that, including early runs. That very first drive, he ripped off a couple of big runs. You're not wrong about Cleveland's opening drive. They had a couple sweet scripted plays. The touchdown was Fannin coming out of the backfield, which was a really slick play. Play before that, the play to Bond was pretty sweet. It's like, well, okay, why don't we script more plays? But they couldn't do it there. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Sanders at some point this season, maybe even out of the bye, because the Gabriel experience is a pretty rough one there. Their wide receivers are awful, though. That's part of the problem there, too. All right, last game to cover, Bucs and the Saints. We have news out of New Orleans. Tyler Shuck going to be our starter this week.
I don't love it. I don't love it. I know Rattler kind of played his way out of this job the last 2 weeks. He had been pretty good at taking care of the ball. The first 6 games, that has completely fallen apart. He was terrible against Tampa Bay, but I don't think Chuck's going to be a whole lot better. We actually saw a pretty reasonable sample out of him. Threw it 30 times late in this game, 17 of 30, 128 and a pick. Again, with how Rattler was playing, I totally understand the decision. You invested a 2nd round pick in this guy. You got to see what you have at some point. You're 1-7 on the season, but this doesn't make me feel more optimistic about Alvin Kamara. It doesn't make me feel more optimistic about Chris Olave. I still am holding out hope for Olave though, because he's, I think, made the most out of this situation for as bad as the Saints have been. Like he's actually having a pretty decent year. He's still way up there in targets, team target share, stuff like that. But I don't see this being much of an infusion for the New Orleans Saints, and just a really, really tough landing spot on the road at the Rams, with the Rams coming off a bye.
Yep. Agreed. The Saints defense showed up in this game. The Bucs have to kind of address goal line offense, maybe perhaps a little bit. it was pretty rough getting, they got to there and they had some other drives where they were moving the ball okay, but they also stalled out at times. It wasn't, and Grant, this is a team on the second game of a road trip where they're really hurting offensively, injury wise. I kind of get it. It was an easy spot to overlook, and they still covered. I mean, let's face it, their defense played great in this game. But this is a team, the Bucs, that really needs the bye. I think they got it at exactly the right time.
100%. This was a classic. We know we have the bye coming. We know we're the better team. Let's just get in, do what we have to do, and get out. A very weird game. Like multiple defensive touchdowns called back on the Buccaneers. Like this probably should have been a bigger blowout. It was really like the one true under of the week, other than Monday Night Football. We had a couple pushes. Everything else was going over. And this was just, you knew the under was hitting like 6 minutes in, like, especially once Tampa Bay went 4 and out on the goal line. It was just every time you needed a turnover, it's like, oh, this team's getting close. Boom, drive ends. It was just a beautiful, beautiful spot if you were around the under, but not a whole lot of takeaways for me. I think this is, like you said, the Bucs just taking care of business. Let's get a little bit healthier and let's hit the gas coming out of the bye.
Yep. The other thing to watch for in the next week, maybe even later today, the trade deadline. It's a week from today. Saints, Browns, Jets in particular, I'd watch. Bengals, I'd pay attention to. Do they trade Trey Hendrickson? Because at 3-5, they just lost to the Jets. This was a tough spot for them. They clearly don't have much in the way they're not really that much to look forward to the rest of this year. Yeah. The weird thing is they would have been a half game out in the AFC North had they held on to win that game. They scored 38 points and they found a way to lose. I mean, it's one of the all-time worst losses. Just in context of what it means for the rest of their season. They had a chance to make this season meaningful. It is not going to be meaningful. That's my take, and I'm sticking by it there. Yeah,
unfortunately, I think you're right. That was one you kind of had to have, one that you certainly circled as a win on the schedule. And I don't know, maybe they'll beat a team they shouldn't beat, and then they'll find a way to make this interesting, once Burrow's back. But we'll see about that.
All right. That's going to wrap it up for today. Big thanks to everybody for tuning in, especially those chatting in the live stream, but also those of you listening on the download as well. We appreciate you. Good luck in your leagues. We'll have a guest tomorrow to talk about week 9 matchups. Stay tuned. And thanks for listening to RotoWire.